It was Tuesday night. It was my day off, the day I usually stayed home and relaxed. My phone rang. I was surprised. I wasn't expecting a call from anyone at that time. It was my manager from work, the job I hate and can barely wait to get a day off from. But I have to stay because the salary is good. I worked as a guard at the public cemetery, a very depressing job with absolutely nothing new ever happening. I answered the call. My manager told me that Richard, my coworker, had been in an accident on his way to the cemetery. He had lost consciousness and was taken to the hospital. My manager asked me to cover tonight's shift and tomorrow's temporarily. Honestly, I was really upset. My 2 days off were cancelled because of an emergency, but I had no other choice. I agreed. I put on my uniform and headed to the cemetery immediately. The weather was extremely cold that night. It was the kind of night perfect for staying home and watching a late movie, not spending it among the dead. I arrived at the cemetery. Everything was quiet and normal. I entered the security room, grabbed a flashlight, and started my shift, walking between the graves and pathways to make sure no one was trespassing. I always found it funny how much people fear cemeteries. The place was actually very boring once you got used to it. I wasn't used to working night shifts since I usually worked mornings, but honestly, the place wasn't much different at night. Every day felt the same, dull and repetitive. Hours passed as I wandered aimlessly among the graves. The routine made me sleepy and even made me wish for something, anything, to happen just to break the boredom. But when something finally did happen, I realized that the silence had been a blessing, and that I had wished for the wrong thing. During one of my rounds, I saw something that definitely shouldn't have been there. In the distance, deeper inside the cemetery, there was a glowing red light. I thought someone might have lit a fire, but how did they get inside? And when? I walked closer, holding my flashlight. What I saw froze the blood in my veins. A group of masked people were gathered around the fire. There were many of them, and what I saw next chilled me to the core. They were digging up a grave to pull out a corpse. The speed and skill with which they were digging made it clear this wasn't their first time. They had done this many times before. That's when I truly felt danger. I quickly pulled out my phone, my hands trembling, and started recording what was happening. My heart was pounding as I sent the video to my manager on WhatsApp. Fear took control of me, but I knew I couldn't just stand there watching. I had to do something, but what could I do alone against all of them? I decided to hide somewhere and call the police. I ran toward the security room, but when I reached the door, I froze. Two of them were already inside the office, calmly searching through my papers and personal belongings. However, something on their faces showed confusion. Something was troubling them. Within seconds, I understood. It was me. They hadn't expected to find my ID and papers there. Now they knew someone else was present in the cemetery, someone who wasn't one of them. A wave of terror ran through my body. I was trapped. The only exit left was the back gate. I remembered there was an old entrance rarely used. Not many people knew about it. I ran toward it, praying they wouldn't catch me. But when I reached the gate, my heart sank. Two more of them were standing there. They looked terrifying, alert, watching every movement. I hid behind a nearby coffin, trying to control my breathing, but fear was overwhelming me. Then a flashlight beam started moving toward me. It exposed my hiding spot. They saw me. The moment the light hit me, I jumped and ran. I shoved one of them down and kept running, not knowing where I was heading. I could hear them shouting words I couldn't understand, and footsteps chasing me. I saw the cemetery wall ahead of me. It wasn't far, but it was very high. The only idea in my mind was to climb it and escape. If I failed, I would die. I jumped and managed to grab the top of the wall, but I didn't have enough strength to pull myself up. Suddenly, I felt a hand grab my leg and pull me down. I kicked him in the chest, but another joined him. They dragged me off the wall and threw me to the ground. I found myself surrounded. Heavy blows rained down on my head and body. I screamed, but one of them covered my mouth with tape. They dragged me across the cemetery ground to the fire where they were performing their rituals. The air was thick with smoke. I looked around in shock and saw their leader. His face was grim and frightening, partially covered by his clothes. They tied my hands and feet. I was helpless, weak, terrified. They dragged me toward an open coffin. When I looked inside, my stomach turned. Inside was a decomposing corpse, skin melting, bones visible, and a horrible stench filling the air. In less than a second, I found myself lying beside it. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. The smell was unbearable. Then they started burying the grave, with me inside. Their leader stood watching as they followed his orders. I tried to move, to break free, but within minutes they closed the coffin and continued piling dirt on top. Everything went dark. I was buried alive with a corpse. I couldn't scream. I knew that soon the air would run out and I would die. I don't know how much time passed as I struggled desperately to survive. Eventually, despair consumed me. The presence of the rotting body beside me destroyed my nerves completely. Then, silence. No more digging. No more sounds. I was alone underground. I started hitting my head against the coffin, even though I knew no one would hear me. But then, a miracle happened. Someone opened the coffin lid. Fresh air filled my lungs. My heart began to calm when I saw two police officers standing there, with my manager. He told me that when he woke up, he saw the video I had sent. He immediately called the police, and they arrived just in time. The masked group had fled through the back entrance when they heard the sirens. I was taken to the hospital. I had fainted. Part of me still thought it had been a dream. But when I regained full consciousness, I realized it was real. After the investigation, everything became clear. Richard, the co-worker whose shift I covered, confessed. He had been working with that group. He allowed them to enter the cemetery during his shifts in exchange for money so they could perform their rituals. That night, they entered as usual. But his accident prevented him from informing them he wouldn't be there. So when they saw me, they panicked, knowing they could be exposed. That night, I was supposed to die. What saved me, strangely, was one of their beliefs. They were somewhat influenced by Islamic ideas despite their twisted practices. They were against shedding blood. They believed a person should die by nature, not by direct violence. That's why they buried me alive. But if God hadn't saved me, if the police hadn't arrived in time, I wouldn't be telling this story now. Thank God I'm still alive.